A slap, right in the middle of the school hallway. That sound, sharp, clean, and brutal, rang out like a mini explosion in the supposedly safe world of high school students. Everything stopped. Footsteps, laughter, phone chatter. All fell into a deadly silence for a split second. And then something no one expected happened. The girl who got slapped didn't cry, didn't scream, didn't hit back. She smiled. Not a mocking smile, not a forgiving one either. Just the faintest curl of her lips, enough to make the boy who had just struck her instinctively take a step back. That boy's name was Max Reynolds, basketball star, student council president, son of the chairman of the school board. He thought he had just taught a weird girl a lesson. He believed the teachers would cover for him again, his friends would cheer him on, and it would all blow over just like every other time. But just hours later, the video of the slap disappeared from every platform within minutes of being uploaded. His closest friends suddenly vanished. Teachers avoided his eyes, and someone left a wax-scented envelope in his locker with only 2 handwritten words. "We remember." No one knew who Emma was. No one knew why someone so seemingly ordinary had a profile encrypted by the Department of Defense. No one knew who the man in the denim jacket and cowboy hat watching Max from a distance was, until the name was spoken, soft as a breath, but enough to freeze the entire courtyard. "That's Chuck Norris." And Max, the boy who feared no one, began to fear something he'd never considered before: the truth. 3 weeks before the slap, Emma stepped into the halls of Roosevelt High for the first time. There was no grand welcome, no social media posts, no selfies, no tagging new friends. She just walked in quiet as a colorless breeze, leaving everyone unsure what to do with. That silence. She didn't use Instagram, no TikTok, no digital footprint in the virtual world. At a high school where every interaction started with "tag me in that." Emma's absence from social media made her something unsettling, like a ghost. One student whispered in the cafeteria, "She doesn't let anyone in, doesn't let anyone close." But Emma wasn't cold. She smiled when greeted, thanked the cafeteria staff, helped classmates pick up dropped books. It's just... Her eyes always held a certain distance, just enough to keep anyone from stepping over. He noticed her in the first week. Max Reynolds, the king atop the high school social tower, wasn't used to being ignored. He was used to admiring eyes, to praise. But Emma only nodded, then kept walking. The more she dismissed him, the more it irritated him. That girl challenged his entire world, where high school dominance was a given simply by being calm. Then came that morning. The hallway was packed with students getting ready for class. Max approached, his voice louder than usual, joking, "Look who finally decided to show her face." His friends gathered around him, forming the familiar circle like guards of a king. Emma stood by her locker, arranging her books carefully, without looking up. No reaction. Max raised an eyebrow, stepped closer. "Hey, I'm talking to you. Didn't anyone teach you manners?" The air began to still. Phones were raised. Cameras quietly turned on. Everyone waited for drama. Emma gently closed her locker, turned around, her eyes not defensive, not confrontational either, just still. "How can I help you?" "Help stop acting like you're better than everyone else. No friends, no cliques, no social media. Who do you think you are?" Emma paused for a second. "I don't think I'm special. I think everyone is special in their own way." That's when Max snapped. The slap came fast and sharp like a reflex. The sound echoed. Emma tilted her head from the force of the slap. Her cheek flushed red, and then she turned back. Her eyes remained calm, but her lips curled ever so slightly, as if she had seen this coming. It wasn't a smile of anger. It wasn't one of pain. It was awareness. An awareness that the truth was about to be revealed. In the very next class period, a video of the slap surfaced in the unofficial Roosevelt High student group chat. Just a few seconds, a few angles, but enough to turn Max's furious face and the sharp sound of that slap into the event of the day. One underclassman gasped. "She didn't cry. She smiled. Gave me chills." But then something strange happened. The video kept disappearing. It would be uploaded, then gone within minutes. No one admitted to taking it down, but no one could keep it online for more than 10 minutes. Max was the first to notice. "Why does the video keep disappearing?" He texted Tyler, his best friend since elementary school. Tyler replied after a pause. "Heard it got flagged for violence. Auto-deleted. That fast. Someone would have to be watching 24/7 to catch it that quick." Maybe. Someone is watching 24/7. The message ended with a shrug emoji, but Max couldn't bring himself to laugh. That lunch period, he walked into the cafeteria like usual, expecting his usual crew to rise, make room, greet him, but half the table was empty. The rest kept their eyes glued to their phones, avoiding his gaze. He sat down, pretending not to notice. "What's going on?" Max asked quietly. Tyler didn't look up from his tray. Nothing. Probably just busy with school stuff. But the whispers across the cafeteria told a different story. Groups of girls went silent when Max passed by. Younger students who usually greeted him with excitement turned away, avoiding eye contact. Even the gym teacher, who always patted Max on the back every morning, walked past without a word. Bit by bit, Max's high school kingdom began to fracture. He was used to being the center of attention, but this time, the attention came with judgmental eyes. During chemistry class, Max's lab partner asked to switch groups. "It's just Emma's cousin goes to my church," she whispered. "Emma doesn't have any relatives here." Max snapped back instinctively, then froze. He didn't even know why he felt so sure. "I don't want to get involved," the classmate murmured. "My dad told me to stay away. Stay away. Stay away from what Max didn't know." But when he opened his locker at the end of the day, An envelope slipped out, thick, elegant, no name on it, no sender, just sealed with red wax like a letter from the 18th century. Max opened it in the restroom, his hands trembling slightly. Inside, there was only a single slip of paper, flowing cursive, black ink, slightly tilted, just 2 words. We remember. We don't forget. Max stared at the words, a chill creeping into his chest. It wasn't fear of punishment. It was fear of being watched. He tore up the paper, threw it into the toilet. But the thick paper wouldn't sink. Max had to fish it out by hand, crush it into a ball, then stuff it into his pocket. As he opened the bathroom door to leave, he jumped. Principal Wilson was standing there, his face stern, his voice calm. 8 a.m. tomorrow. My office. Don't be late. What's this about, I think? You know. He turned and walked away, leaving Max standing there, soaked in cold sweat, his hand clenched around the damp wad of paper in his pocket. 3 weeks had passed, and the school counselor, Ms. Davis, still hadn't been able to meet Emma in person. Every time she scheduled an appointment, the girl would politely decline. Would it be okay if we rescheduled for next week? Not rude, not evasive, but never letting anyone past that calm exterior. Davis had started to grow curious, partly because of her instincts after more than 20 years as a counselor. She had always been the one who could see the stories behind a student's eyes. But more than that, Emma's name had never shown up in the standard school transfer system. One Thursday afternoon, after most students had left, Davis decided to check the records. Opening the internal database, she typed in Emma Norris. What appeared on the screen wasn't the usual student profile. Instead, a bold red message flashed across a white background: access restricted, Federal Security Protocol 1972-C. Just below it, a faint pentagon seal along with contact instructions for a Department of Defense liaison, Colonel James Harwick. Davis took off her glasses, blinking rapidly. She tried opening other tabs. Hit refresh. Same result, access denied. Her heart pounded. This wasn't a system glitch. This was encryption at the government level. She reached for her phone, fingers hovering over the keypad. The number had a Washington, D.C. area code. But in the end, she didn't call. Instead, Davis dialed an internal extension and called in Tom Anderson, the computer science teacher and former military officer. Within 5 minutes, Anderson entered the office, still catching his breath. Davis locked the door and lowered her voice. I need you to see this. Urgently. When he read the line, Protocol 1972-C, Anderson froze. His face went pale. What is it? Davis asked, her voice trembling. Anderson whispered, this code. I've heard of it. Extremely rare. It's used to protect the identity of individuals connected to intelligence, national security, or witnesses in special protection programs. It could be the child of a high-ranking official, or what Davis cut in, or the grandchild of someone the government doesn't want the world to know is still alive. The room felt a few degrees colder. Davis murmured, "But Emma, she's just a high school student." "And that," Anderson said, eyes still locked on the screen, "is exactly what makes her dangerous." Dangerous because no one knows who she really is. And that's how the government protects their most valuable assets. Davis swallowed hard. "What should we do?" Anderson shook his head, enunciating every word. "Nothing. Don't approach. Don't mention her name. Don't dig. Treat her like any other student. Because if we ask the wrong person, people will show up, and no one will dare ask who they are." But what neither of them realized was that even whispered this conversation couldn't escape the tangled web of Roosevelt High's rumor network. Just a few hours later, word of the encrypted file had reached the students, and like every rumor passed through too many ears, it was completely distorted. Emma's the daughter of a CIA agent. No. She's a witness to that assassination in New York. She's under protection now. She's the granddaughter of a military general, one who led the Iraq War. Definitely someone in the witness protection program. Anyone who messes with her disappears. In the hallways, the library, the cafeteria. Emma's name was no longer just the strange girl. She had become a living legend, a giant question mark, both magnetic and terrifying. Friday afternoon, the stadium was nearly empty. Only Max remained running alone, lap after lap. He wasn't running for fitness anymore. He ran to drown out the noise, to avoid the stares, to not feel the silence from the people who once called him a hero. Wind brushed through his hair. Footsteps hit the rubber track in steady rhythm. Everything seemed calm, until he felt it, an unmistakable sensation. A gaze, not curiosity, not judgment, surveillance. At the far end of the field, just outside the chain-link fence, a man stood motionless, faded denim jacket, cowboy hat pulled low, covering nearly half his face, arms crossed, stance as still as stone. Max tried to ignore him. Could be a parent waiting for their kid, or maybe a scout happens all the time. But the strange part was he never looked away from Max. Lap 2, lap 3, lap 4. Every time Max rounded that curve, he was still there, unmoving, no phone, no blinking, just watching. Max started to feel breathless, and not from running, but from that stare, as if it pierced through every layer of skin, every mask, every ounce of arrogance he had worn for the past 3 years. He slowed, then stopped completely, reached for the water bottle on the nearby bench. Unable to take it anymore, Max called out, "Do you need something?" The man didn't answer, didn't move, just stared, not like a stranger, but like someone who was measuring him. From behind, the soft tap of approaching shoes. Coach Bennett, the man who had mentored Max since freshman year, walked up, clipboard in hand. "Reynolds, your right shoulder's off when you hit the curve. Fix the..." He fell silent. The clipboard hit the ground with a clack. the plastic striking the track's surface and echoing through the silence. Coach Bennett's eyes were locked on the man beyond the fence. Max turned to him. "Coach, what is it?" Coach Bennett lowered his voice, his face shifting to a seriousness that sent a chill down Max's spine. "Let's get back to running those last few laps." Wait. Who is that guy? The coach swallowed hard, avoiding Max's gaze. "That's Chuck Norris." Max's heart skipped a beat. "What?" "He's not just an actor," Bennett said, voice low. 8 black belts, karate legend, former Marine, the only man who ever made the U.S. military rewrite their hand-to-hand combat training. But why would he? "Because you touched his blood," the coach whispered. "Emma, she's his granddaughter." Max froze. The wind that swept across the track no longer felt cool. It cut like blades. The world he thought he controlled was crumbling. And that man's eyes, those cold, evaluating eyes, felt like they were being etched into his bones. Coach Bennett placed a trembling hand on Max's shoulder. "I'm benching you for tomorrow's game. And Max, if I were you, I'd start thinking about how to fix yourself." Max lowered his head. For the first time in his life, not from shame, not from fear, but from understanding some mistakes can't just be ignored anymore. The next morning, 8:15 a.m., Max sat alone in the principal's office on an old brown leather chair. No one spoke, no explanations, no questions. The only sound was the ticking of the wall clock, marking every tense second. He glanced at it for the 5th time. 8:15. Principal Wilson was 15 minutes late. The door finally opened, but it wasn't Wilson who walked in. It was Vice Principal Harrington, known for being cold, silent, and the one who handled cases the school didn't want to deal with directly. "Apologies for the wait." His tone carried not an ounce of apology. Max sat upright, bracing for the usual soft reprimand. But Harrington didn't sit. Instead, he stepped to the side wall and pressed a hidden series of buttons on a concealed panel. Click. A large screen descended from the ceiling. The lights in the room dimmed. The principal's office suddenly transformed into a private screening room. "What is this?" Max asked, trying to keep his voice steady. "Evidence," Harrington replied, pressing the remote. The first video appeared. A school hallway. Max shoved a younger student into a locker, their backpacks scattering across the floor. September, last year. Max couldn't even remember the victim's name. The second video. A female student flinching, backing away from Max's finger pointed inches from her face. October, right before Halloween. Then the 3rd, the 4th, the 5th. Each clip a piece of a hidden history Max had once believed was buried, covered up, or simply ignored. The voices in the footage echoed, sometimes sobbing, sometimes pleading, sometimes painfully silent. Then came the footage of Max intimidating a teacher into changing his grade, his face smug and entitled. Max felt sick. And finally, the video everyone had already seen, the slap. But this time, from 3 different camera angles. So clear, the sound boomed like thunder. Max lowered his head. Not from guilt, but because there was nothing left to say. These clips. Max stammered. Where did they come from? Harrington looked up from a folder, sent anonymously, to the entire school board, and to your father. Max went numb, but Harrington wasn't finished. The last clip is something you've never seen. The screen now showed a martial arts training room, white lights, cushioned walls. 2 grown men in protective gear faced off against a small girl, Emma. Max stared, frozen. In just 30 seconds, Emma took both men down with speed, technique, and precision that chilled the room. No wasted motion, no hesitation, no mercy. She's a 3rd-degree black belt in Taekwondo, Harrington said. Also ranked in Jiu-Jitsu and Krav Maga. In other words, she could have put you on the floor any time she wanted. But she didn't. Max didn't even dare breathe. Your father is waiting outside, Harrington said quietly. And this afternoon there will be a school-wide assembly. Every teacher and student is required to attend. Am I being expelled? Harrington closed the folder, his voice slow and deliberate. That depends on you. What you hear during that assembly, and what you choose to do afterward. That afternoon, the atmosphere at Roosevelt High was more suffocating than ever. An urgent announcement was broadcast across campus. All students and staff must report to the auditorium at 12 p.m. Attendance will be checked. No exceptions. It was unprecedented. Group chats exploded with speculation. Some believed a major scandal was about to break. Others guessed a popular student was getting expelled. But everyone could feel it. Something serious was coming. In the auditorium, Max sat in the back row, head bowed low. Beside him was his father, James Reynolds, businessman, chairman of the school board. The man who once held sway over every decision made here. Today, he said nothing. No smile, no proud designer suit. Just arms crossed tightly, lips pressed into a line. 12 p.m. The lights in the auditorium dimmed. A spotlight snapped on. Principal Wilson walked out in a black suit, his expression heavy. No pleasantries, no introductions. Roosevelt High has a serious problem. A wave of whispers rippled through the crowd of students. We have allowed a culture of fear where power overrides truth. I am the head of this school, and I take responsibility. At that moment, the large screen behind him lit up. The same video Max had seen in the principal's office. But this time, it was public. 12 incidents, 12 acts of violence, 12 victims who had suffered in silence. Every clip stirred murmurs in the crowd. Many students turned to look at Max, still seated, head lowered, shoulders trembling. Then came the emails. The digital trail between Max's father and the principal promises of donations. Thinly veiled threats. Instructions to cover up Max's behavior in exchange for keeping the school peaceful. This is no longer just the fault of one student, Wilson said slowly. This is the fault of a system. Of us, the adults who stood by and let you get hurt. James Reynolds shot up from his seat, his voice roaring. This is slander. Those emails are out of context. You'll pay for broadcasting private material like this. The entire auditorium fell into dead silence. And then the side door by the stage opened. A man stepped through. Denim jacket, cowboy hat. His walk slow and steady like he carried the weight of history on his shoulders. Chuck Norris. The auditorium held its breath. Some students recognized him instantly, mouths agape. A few began to cry. No one dared speak. Behind him walked Emma. She moved with unwavering calm, eyes steady, posture grounded. No hiding, no hesitation. Principal Wilson stepped back and offered the microphone. Chuck Norris took it, his voice gravelly and low, not loud, but it filled every corner of the room. You failed. As a father. His gaze locked directly on James Reynolds. I did not. No explanation. No argument. The room stayed silent, his words echoing like a verdict. A female student, one of Max's former victims, began to clap. Then another. Then the entire auditorium. Hundreds of students rose to their feet, applause swelling like a wave, toppling the invisible throne Max had ruled from for 3 years. James Reynolds looked around, saw every eye turn toward him. No fear, no respect. He sank into his chair, for the first time, defeated. Beside him, Max lowered his head, not from shame, but because for the first time he began to realize what he had truly lost. As the applause died down, Emma stepped up to the microphone. There were no spotlights, no dramatic music. Just a 17-year-old girl standing before hundreds of eyes with a steady posture and unwavering gaze. And the auditorium was utterly silent. I didn't want this to happen. Emma's voice rang out clear, steady, not loud, but carrying an unusual gravity that drew every ear toward her. I didn't come here to be famous. I just wanted to study like everyone else, take tests, chat at lunch, make college plans, be normal. She paused, looking straight toward the back row where Max sat. When he slapped me, I had choices. I've been trained to counter immediately. I could have dropped him right there. I could have reported it, sparked a media storm, demanded justice the loudest way possible. But I didn't. The auditorium held its breath. Emma continued, her voice deeper now, as if reaching into the room's collective conscience. Because my grandfather, the man standing over there, taught me this. Real strength isn't in the fist. It's in choosing not to use it. Her eyes scanned the entire room, hundreds of students, teachers, parents. The most painful thing wasn't the slap. It was knowing I was strong enough to protect myself, but still being seen as weak. It was having something to say, but being told to stay silent because some power will crush your voice. I let that slap happen, so everyone could see the true face of a system. She turned to Max, not with anger, not with hatred, but with honesty. "I don't hate Max. I'm afraid he'll learn nothing from this. I'm afraid that 10 years from now, he'll become a boss who bullies his employees, a husband who threatens his wife, a father who teaches his son that strength is always right. And I can't let that happen." The entire room was holding its breath. No phone screens glowed, no one recorded. Everyone was present, living fully in that moment. Emma continued, "But this isn't just about me. It's not just about Max. Every single person here. If you've ever stayed silent while someone was being bullied, then you are part of the problem. Every teacher who looked away, every parent who said, 'Kids fight, it's normal.' Everyone who saw injustice but didn't want to get involved. This is not about punishment. This is a call. Change doesn't begin with a memo. It begins with us." Emma paused, then spoke softer, yet every word pierced straight to the heart. "I won't press charges against Max, not because I forgive him, but because I choose to believe he can change. I'm not afraid of being hit. I'm afraid he'll learn nothing from it." And finally, she ended with, "This story ends here, not to end someone, but to begin a new path for all of us." She stepped back, standing beside her grandfather. Chuck Norris said nothing. He simply placed a hand on Emma's shoulder so gently, it was barely noticeable. But his eyes, they shone like the midday sun. It wasn't the look of a grandfather protecting his granddaughter. It was the gaze of a warrior passing on a legacy. After that assembly, Roosevelt High was never the same. The next morning, an internal email was sent to all students, parents, and faculty. Max Reynolds is officially suspended for 30 days. He is required to attend 3 counseling sessions per week, 100 hours of community service specifically in anti-bullying programs. Right below it, a second announcement, even shorter. James Reynolds, chairman of the school board, has submitted his resignation effective immediately. No more protection, no more cover-ups, no more safety nets for Max. That Monday morning, Max didn't go to school. He stayed in his room, turned off all his social media. Messages from former friends had all but stopped. The few that remained were cold, distant, polite. He opened his laptop. The screen glowed softly in the dark. At the center of the screen, a video of Emma's entire speech, recorded by a student. It was shaky, blurry, but her voice, clear and deep, struck something inside him, something that made Max's chest tighten. He watched without looking away. He rewound the part where Emma said, "I'm not afraid of being hit. I'm afraid he'll learn nothing from it." Max sat still. No more anger, no more defenses, no more of that instinctual, "I'm not wrong, people just misunderstood me." Only one quiet question echoed from deep within. What have I become? Max opened a blank document. He didn't post it, didn't send it, no hashtags, no fake remorse selfie, just writing for himself. Dear Emma, I don't know if you'll ever read this, but I think I need to write it, not to be forgiven, but to remember exactly who I was and who I never want to be again, line by line. The words came slow, trembling, then faster, stronger. Max wrote about the power he once held, the times he hurt people just because it felt fun, the approving nods that made him think he was right, and those late-night moments when he'd remember the eyes of the ones he bullied, but never apologized to. 12:07 p.m., exactly 1 week after the slap. He typed the final sentence. "Thank you for not hitting me back, because if you had, I'd never have had the chance to truly see myself the way I do now." Max didn't know what to do with the letter, but for the first time he hadn't written to protect his image. He'd written to peel off the mask he'd worn for so many years. He was no longer Roosevelt High's golden boy. But maybe that was a good thing, because starting today, he would begin learning everything from scratch. 1 week after that fateful assembly, the name Emma Norris was no longer a mystery. It had become a symbol. The video of her speech, filmed on a phone from the 3rd row, spread like wildfire. No professional lighting, no background music, no fancy editing, just calm eyes, an unwavering voice, and a truth that couldn't be denied. Over 3 million views in the first 5 days. The hashtag #ItStops here appeared across Twitter, Instagram, then TikTok. Hundreds of personal stories began flooding in silent wounds. Kids once labeled as weak, victims of bullying just for being different. Emma didn't respond. She didn't sign any media deals. She turned down national TV interviews. She didn't step into the spotlight. She replied to only one letter handwritten by an 11th grade student from a small town called Blue Creek, Texas. The girl had written, "At my school, kids get bullied every day for their background, their skin, their gender. I told my principal about your story. He said if I could invite you, he'd hold the school's first ever full assembly. I don't think you'll come, but I'm writing anyway, because real hope starts when we dare to send what we believe in." Emma read that letter 3 times, then quietly made plans for her first trip, not to CNN, not to a major talk show, but to a small high school where no one even knew her name. Saturday morning, a tiny gymnasium. Echoes bouncing off a rusted microphone, students seated on wooden bleachers, teachers standing quietly in the back. No live stream, no professional cameras, just a parent recording from the left corner of the room with a phone. Emma stood before them, empty-handed. "I'm not here to tell my story," she began. "I'm here to remind you every single person sitting here has the power to end a toxic cycle." She told them about Roosevelt, about the slap, but she didn't focus on the one who hit her. She focused on the ones who stayed silent, the ones who looked away when they saw injustice, the teachers who advised avoidance instead of facing the issue, the parents who called pain a rite of passage. "We're taught that strength means winning," Emma said. "But I was taught true strength is when you endure without losing who you are." She paused, then turned to look at the 11th grade student who had written her the letter, and smiled. Change doesn't begin with big signs or loud announcements. It begins with one person brave enough to believe that goodness still has a place in this world. The 7-minute video, shaky, blurry, partially blocked by heads in front, was shared millions of times, not for its production, but for its message that pierced through screens. Because the speaker didn't need a stage, yet still made an entire gym sit up straight, fall silent, and quietly wipe away tears. Later that evening, on the drive home from the trip, Chuck Norris turned to his granddaughter as they passed a dimly lit street, golden light dancing across her face. National TV invited you to speak, but you turned it down. Why choose a small-town school instead? Emma leaned her head against the window, watching the scattered lights outside. Because TV wanted drama. The small-town school wanted change. Chuck let out a soft laugh and nodded. If your grandmother were alive, she'd be so proud. She used to say, strength doesn't lie in how many people are listening. It lies in holding on to your truth, even when no one's listening. Emma didn't answer. She just reached for his hand, the hand that had once fought battles, now passing on something far greater, a belief in kindness. Saturday, 8 a.m. A small dojo in the southern suburbs of the city. No flashy sign, no advertising, just a wooden door. Inside, a polished hardwood floor, faded black and white photos on the wall, and the quiet atmosphere of discipline and patience. Max stood outside the door. No designer hoodie, no expensive haircut, just a young man in simple jeans, a worn t-shirt, and eyes stripped of pride. The door swung open from within. Emma saw him. No surprise, no coldness, and no instant forgiveness. Just a slight nod, as if to say, I knew this day would come. She didn't ask, why are you here? She didn't demand an apology. She didn't expect anything. She simply said, changing rooms over there. Whatever uniform fits, wear it. We start with meditation, not combat. Max bowed his head. Thank you for giving me a chance. She didn't respond, just turned back to the group of kids she was guiding, teaching them how to hold their balance in a basic stance. No need for words, because the important things never need many. Class began. 12 children, the oldest 13, the youngest barely 6, mimicked Emma's every move with quiet focus. There were no shouts, no crack of whips on the floor, only soft instructions, encouraging glances, and nods of approval in place of scolding. Max stood at the edge, watching. For the first time, he saw strength in gentleness. He used to think leadership meant giving orders. Today, he saw Emma lead by listening. At the end of class, he stepped forward and grabbed one of the training mats being rolled up. Emma looked over, didn't stop him. They folded the last mat together, in silence. That day, Max said quietly, "You could have destroyed me in front of the entire school. You had every right, but you didn't." Emma folded the corner of the mat, replied gently, "Because revenge is easy. But ending a cycle of violence that's hard, someone has to be the first to stop. Max was silent for a moment, then nodded. I don't want to learn how to fight. I want to learn how not to. Emma looked at him, didn't smile, didn't nod in praise, just looked without the guarded eyes she once had. Next class is Monday at 8 a.m. Don't be late. Max turned to leave, then paused, turned back and asked quietly, "So, what am I now?" "A student, a fighter, someone who's been forgiven." A 7-year-old standing nearby, small hands holding a pair of sparring gloves, cut in. "You're the new kid." Both of them laughed. Emma looked at Max. "That's right. And sometimes, starting over is the bravest thing you can do." That night, as the dojo closed, Chuck Norris stood across the street beneath the old oak tree. He didn't step inside. He simply observed, watched his granddaughter gently adjust a child's stance, patiently guiding them, watched the boy who was once the king of the school quietly scrubbing the floor no one had asked him to, and no one was praising him. Chuck nodded. Not because of Max, but because Emma had fully lived what he once taught her. True strength isn't in the punch. It's in choosing not to throw it even when you can. Ton 7p. Exactly 1 week after the slap, in a small dojo on the edge of the city, 2 people folded up a mat together. One who had learned how to take over the world, one who was teaching the world how to choose itself again. 3 months after the Roosevelt High incident, there were no more lines of people waiting to take pictures with Emma, no more trending hashtags, no more reporters outside the school gates. Everything returned to normal. But one thing had changed forever. At Roosevelt, a comprehensive anti-bullying initiative was launched. Every new student was paired with a buddy. A monthly open dialogue session was held between students and teachers where every voice was heard. Former silent victims became mentors for younger generations. Max returned to school after his suspension. He didn't sit at the front. He wasn't captain of anything. He went to class quietly, completed his counseling sessions, fulfilled all 100 hours of community service without asking for leniency. He didn't try to make friends. He just started with not hurting anyone anymore. Emma remained the quiet girl, but no longer a mystery. She didn't become a celebrity. She didn't label herself a feminist icon. She simply lived the way she had always wanted, studying, preparing for college, and keeping her heart at peace. But her legacy didn't live in grades, titles, or articles. It lived in the changed eyes, in the voices that once trembled but now spoke up, in the children who once shrank but now stood up for others. And then something special happened. At a small dojo on the outskirts of the city, where Emma taught kids how to find balance before throwing their first kick, a young boy raised his hand and asked, "Why don't you teach us how to fight first? Fighting's what makes you strong." "Right." Emma smiled softly, placing a hand on his shoulder. "I teach you how to stand steady, because people only fight when they've lost balance. But someone who's steady knows when to let go." From a distance, Chuck Norris stood behind the window frame, arms crossed, eyes quietly watching. He didn't need to step inside because he knew his granddaughter had inherited more than just martial arts. She had embraced a way of life. Not everyone who's stronger is the winner. Sometimes, the bravest person is the one who chooses not to strike back, not out of weakness, but because they're strong enough to forgive. If you've ever been hurt by silence, remember this: one person brave enough to speak up can change an entire generation. And maybe that person is you.